Number 5. CCTV footage. How on earth did we ever find cryptids and other paranatural beings before we started putting cameras on every street corner and inside everybody's pocket? If for nothing else, I've got to say the surveillance state era has made it way easier to find footage of weird things running around in the dark. Take a look at this extremely creepy footage that we found posted to Reddit. Recorded here is what someone described as a skinwalker caught on camera, and honestly I'm pretty inclined to agree. Let's roll it. Pretty darn creepy, huh? At first glance, you would totally be forgiven for thinking that's a demon or a dog monster. And it's only when you brave up and look through the cracks in your fingers, you're willing to take another look, you realize what you're watching is a human being running by on all fours, like perfectly like an animal. Whoever this is running on all fours better than I run on twos. This is one of the freakiest things I've seen in a good while, and I literally exclusively watch freaky content online all day, every day for my job, so it stands out. This one actually made me recoil. I've never seen a human being move like that. Well, allegedly a human. That's why we're including it in this video. Could this be a human, or is this another being altogether? Some powerful shapeshifter caught mid-transformation, dashing through a Walmart parking lot at 2 in the morning? Now, there's not much information to be found about this, but I still did my digging for you just because I care. From what I could garner and gather, the footage was recorded in Mexico a few years back, at the start of 2020, and a few Redditors who were helping me out said that apparently it was a little bit of like a national meme. So if we have any Mexican viewers out there who can confirm or deny this and saw this footage and started laughing, I would love to hear from you about it, because I do want to get to the bottom of one of the weirdest things I've seen in a minute. Prank, hoax, real deal or not, I don't really know about that, but what I can guarantee you is that whatever it is genuinely terrifying. And if you're looking for loads more scary content of shapeshifters or all things paranatural, well, I like to think Top 5 Scary is the #1 place to be. We've got our fingers in a little bit of everything scary on the globe, so click through, find something to shriek at or fall asleep to, I'm not judging. Subscribe and stay scared, but finish this video first before you click away. We got more Skinwalker scares coming up for you. Number 4, stray dogs. So for most of these, I found some stories from people on Reddit who claimed that they had experiences with skinwalkers, and all of them are really cool stuff, so I thought I'd share them along with you. Our first one coming up is going to be someone who says this was a family experience they had. This happened to their brother, and I'll paraphrase it ever so slightly for content guidelines, but the story at large is mostly the same. In 2015, my brother worked for a security guard hiring place. I don't really know what you'd call it. Basically, he would call and they would station him someplace or another that needed it. So this particular time, my brother got hired by a local cemetery, as they'd had issues with people sneaking in, going so far as to even break a couple graves. No good? Anyways, his job was to drive around the cemetery and make sure no one was messing around. And this area was pretty rural and had a stray dog problem. Dogs would get lost, or people would abandon them and they would roam the countryside. One night, my brother was stationed at the cemetery and he noticed a big pack of dogs, around 8 or so. He said it was a good assortment, including a tiny little Bichon Frise that had the harness still on and a big old Rottweiler. My brother is driving around real slow and he has the window down when he hears the dogs going wild. And then he hears a sound he described as sounding like that screaming bird from the swamp episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Quick little aside, Taylor again. I hope that's a great frame of reference for you guys, because I've never seen that show, so I got no idea. Okay, story time again. He says he sees something fast and pale running in front of the headlights, and the dogs all start freaking out again. So he follows the dogs in fear that they're going to tear something up. He parks his car and he hears a faint call for help. He shines his light and he sees that the dogs have chased the deer, except the deer was pale, gray, and emaciated. No antlers, and its eyes were completely pitch black. The Rottweiler tried to jump the deer but was thrown off. The creature screeched and then ran into the night on all fours. He never worked for that company again. Bone chiller, eh? What do you guys think? Too good to be true, or too true to be good? Number 3, Iowa sighting. Our next story comes to us from Reddit once again, from the subreddit r/true scary stories. Not to imply the other stories we've been sharing are fake, just that these ones are definitely real. And quick shout out for the Reddit scary horror story community as a whole, putting all these campfire stories in one beautiful digital archive. Coming to us from a user, a weird doggo 64, love that name. They write, as a native, I think me and my mother had a close call with a skinwalker. Now this story I had to trim just the tiniest little bit for timing purposes, so it's paraphrased ever so slightly, but the story has been mostly left intact. My family has lived in Iowa since July of 2017, and we live in a small neighborhood with a minimum of maybe 25 houses, and it's surrounded by forestry. I've seen a bunch of horror movies over the years, so I get pretty paranoid. A year into living there, we get a new dog, and we named him Tucker. He's an energetic little guy with everybody. Now a couple years later, my mom and dad get divorced, and she moved on to a guy that lives a couple miles away from the house. My mom and dad settled on a pretty good schedule for when they could spend the day with us. Now my mom's side is my native side, and we do believe in the lore of skinwalkers. One day it's my mom's turn to look after us. She's driving up this road surrounded by a bunch of trees and farms. There's a hill on this road, and as my mom drove up the hill, she saw something in a field that she described as being tall, gray skinned, and had hooves for feet, and it was walking into the woods. Well, when she reached to a stop sign, she looked back in her mirror and nothing. Now my mom was terrified because she remembered the stories of skinwalkers she would hear as a girl. A couple days later it was nighttime, and my dog had to go outside to the bathroom. I put him on a leash that's connected to the porch. I turned on a light that was outside so I could see where he was going, and I heard him barking. I walked towards the door and I told him to get in, and I look into the darkness to see nothing but eyes shining from the porch light. I pulled him in and I slammed the door as soon as he got outside. I covered every window in the house. It's been 2 months since then, and my routine when it gets dark was what I did when I saw those eyes. I closed the blinds, I locked the doors, and I turn off the lights. Something creeping in the dark? Raccoons? Skinwalkers? What do you think? Number 2. Wow, man, my titles for this one are really good, eh? Sighting. Skinwalker sighting. Our next story was also posted to the Skinwalkers subreddit by user MothGirl11. It's the freshest one up on the list too, posted just 11 days ago, so I hope they're doing well. It starts by saying, I have recently learned what skinwalkers are, and it completely made sense of an event that had happened to me when I was younger that I previously blocked out of my brain. I was visiting my mom's family in California with my parents and siblings. I'd been there before, and I always slept alone on an air mattress in the living room, which had a greenhouse glass pane wall to the front of the house. It was a usual summer evening and everyone was settled into bed. I remembered that I used to like staying up late playing games on my DS. Yeah, I've been getting a little sleepy when I started to hear strange rustling noises coming from the outside. I sat up and peered outside, but I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. The road outside was dimly lit. A few minutes pass and I tell myself it's just a strange animal or something. I laid myself back down, something across the street caught my eye, and I darted back up. Silently, I saw what appeared to be 2 coyote-like figures, only they were walking on their hind legs, which looked much bigger than their front ones. They appeared to be 6, maybe 7 feet tall, and the scariest part was there was absolutely no noise while they moved. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. One of them turned to look towards me, and I ducked my head down. At the time, I didn't think anything other than that I was freaked out. I never asked anyone about it, and it was only as an adult that I realized that there are no animals like the ones I saw. You've got to be a really brave kid, I think, to see 2 7-foot-tall bipedal coyotes and think, yeah, that's just something coyotes do. I would spend the rest of my life buying silver bullets and drawing like salt circles on the floor. Oof. Alright, and at number 1, the new property. Our final story comes to us from someone who might have cursed themselves into moving into a haunted property. Let's take a listen to this posted on a paranormal subreddit by user 1additional2103. It starts by saying, we've been living at this new house for 13 days. We've been taking some suggestions for cleansing the home to get any bad vibes out, but there's a creepy pattern happening. For the 3rd time, I just found bones just outside our door. Hey, no, whoa. Stop the track. Stop the music. Stop the narration. Stop everything. This was the third time you found bones outside your front door, and you didn't burn your house down and move 6 states over. Anyway, okay, yeah, moving on. A few nights ago, there was a pile of smaller bones by the door leading to the front porch. This is a really clear message. On one of the first few nights, there was a long bone by the rear door right where I found a deer skull. I didn't think anything of it the first few times. Again, aside, I'm not sure why, but whatever. I gotta move on from this. Assuming the long bone was left there by a previous owner, and I chalked up the pile to an animal, but it's kind of weird that it's happened 3 times now, and each time by a door. The other strange things happening to me are I can't get the motion lights to work outside at all. They were already installed. I changed bulbs twice now in them, and they worked when I went inside, but the next night they didn't. So I'm just chalking this one up to bad wiring. A few times I've heard very strange sounds coming from the woods. I'm an avid hunter and I do a lot of camping, and I've never heard anything like this before. It kind of sounds like a propeller chopping through wood. Number 5, weird goat. Coming up first on our list of unsettling skinwalker encounters is this strange footage that's been making the rounds around TikTok, and understandably why when you see, how weird this is. Take a quick look for me. Looks like a cute little goat at first. As cute as a goat can be, no goat hate. Until it gets up close to the front door and stares, there's just something off about this thing, you know? Goats are kind of weird looking as is, but this one looks like it's got a secret behind its eyes, or it's giving you that look where it's asking you if you have any games on your phone. It just looks wrong, you know? In that indescribable uncanny valley way. Especially as it's shown when the video cuts back again and we see the goats almost got like dog looking eyes. It certainly does not look like any goat that I have ever seen. That's for certain. Now, I couldn't tell you if this is a skinwalker in disguise wearing a goat costume, or just a goat being particularly bizarre, which is not entirely unheard of. Goats are considered one of the more demonic animals. They're very commonly associated with Satan and Lucifer and all sorts of hellish manners. It's said that skinwalkers are Dene witches who have gone against the natural order of things and use powerful magic to be able to take the form of any animal that they so please. As some local legends say that a way to suss out a skinwalker is through their eyes, being able to see them shine differently than normal. That would certainly explain what's going on with this goat's bizarre eyes, and unless there's any goat experts out there in the comments that can help me out with this one, I'm really not sure what we're looking at besides something terrifying. And if you're looking for more terrifying stories about skinwalkers, cryptids, aliens, really just about anything scary under the sun, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. So click through, find something to like, stay subscribed, stay scared, but please, keep watching this video. We did work pretty hard on it. Alright. Back to it. We got way more skinwalker stories for you coming up. Number 4, Idaho. Now, Idaho is pretty well known in the paranormal community as being a place where a lot of strange stuff is going on. It's no Ohio, but it's up there as far as scary states go. Our first freaky story is gonna come to us from a Redditor, Chuck Wool, sharing their story on the Skinwalker subreddit. Here we go. Listen to this. It was mid-November 2021, and me and a bunch of friends were camping in the woods in the Sawtooth National Forest near Petite Lake. There were 2 groups of people in 2 tents and 1 in a car, and my buddy and I in hammocks near the edge of the camp. It's about 1 a.m. and we had all been sleeping for about 2 hours. I wake up to my hammock mate panting extremely heavily and yelling my name, and I'm a bit confused and I get up and help him. He's paralyzed by fear. He said that he had extremely vivid dreams, that there was a tall and slender, all black figure trying to break into his car after he'd seen the figure take my head off and the rest of our friends. Normal everyday fun campfire dreams under the stars kind of deal. He said that he woke up and he swore he saw the figure near the car and that he saw all of our heads on sticks. I was obviously pretty freaked out at this point, as I think most people would be, and I immediately felt very uneasy. I told him it was just a bad dream and that he should go back to sleep. One of our buddies yells, proceeding to wake up most of the camp, and we find that our friend in the car that my buddy said clicked the car alarm. So all of us, scared and awake now, have a conversation about what is going on. And my friend in the car says that he heard something scratching on the window and said that he saw a slender black figure running around the car. And the next morning we all talked about what had happened. And 6 of them all had similar nightmares describing similar things. Tall, slender black figures, heads on pikes, the whole scary 9 yards. We had friends that had stayed at the same site 6 months earlier, and a few of them felt like they were were being watched. There are strange things afoot in the Idaho mountains. So what do we think, my top 5 scary gang? Skinwalkers? Witches? Slenderman? Or just something in the coffee? Number 3, it tried to lure me. Now our next one is a personal recounting from someone who thinks that they might have encountered a creature up close when they were younger. Same deal as before, paraphrased ever so slightly just for timing and content guideline purposes, but otherwise intact and presented to you how it was presented. Every summer, my family and I go up to camp in Ellsworth, Maine, and it's about a 3-hour drive from my house. The camp itself is about an hour from the nearest town. I've been going here my entire life, and I've never had something strange like this happen before. I was watching TV in the middle of the night when I heard a noise coming from the kitchen, and I realized that the dogs were going to need to go outside to do their doggy business. So I took them outside. I walked to the front yard and I took the dogs off the leash. It's incredibly dark in the woods in Maine, so I tried to keep my eyes on them. I was momentarily distracted seeing a loon on the lake. When I looked back, I saw that the dogs were looking at something in the woods. I couldn't see what it was, but I just assumed that they'd seen a squirrel or a raccoon. It was then that I realized I didn't see my third dog. She's a small dog and she's completely black. I heard some whimpering, so I stepped out and called out to her again, worried that she got stuck somewhere. Suddenly, I felt something close to me. I looked down and my Alfie was there, I just hadn't seen her. So I started thinking, if Alfie was with me, what was it that I'd heard? The other 2 dogs began to growl. They were walking towards the blackness of the woods. I picked up Alfie and began to back up when I heard the most absolutely bone-chilling thing I have ever heard in my life. I heard something calling Alfie's name. It sounded like it was trying to mimic me, but it was just wrong. The voice sounded distorted. I ran inside with the dogs, and I have no idea what was in the woods. It's been said that a skinwalker's mimicry doesn't just extend to their ability to change shape, but also to mimic speech. Could this have been a close encounter? How else would someone in the woods know the name of the storyteller's dog? Something to think about, and something to keep you awake all night. Number 2, Skinwalker sighting. This was posted to the Skinwalker subreddit. I stumbled upon this forum after my friend had sent me a link a day or 2 after I had told him my story on the res. This story is 100% true. Whether you believe me or not is up to you. I'm just sharing what had happened to me. This all took place a long time ago when I was much younger. I'm indigenous Mexican and Navajo. The cultural difference is somewhat large. I tend to practice my cultural roots within my Nahua side, but I'm also very close to my native family that resides in the States. My family had planned a trip to Arizona, and we'd made arrangements to stay with some family that lived on that reservation. Though, considering how small dwellings are on the res, my parents thought it would still be a good idea to stay at least a few days, and my brother and I would get to go see our cousins. The first day, being the moody teens we were, my cousin and I thought it would be fun to roam the open fields surrounding the res. We were hoping we'd get away from all the noise, and we ended up going off pretty far. Far enough that the houses were out of sight. About halfway back, we noticed a coyote off in the distance. Nothing weird, but we didn't want to get close to it. But that's when it got kind of weird. We heard someone whistling, calling from somewhere around the coyote, but it was something like you'd hear when someone was calling a dog back. It kind of spooked us, so we headed on back. The next day, I started getting headaches. As night rolled around, our parents were out, so my cousins and I played video games for a while until we heard footsteps outside. My brother wanted someone to look out the window with him. I did, and I didn't see anything out of the ordinary, but then the noises started to come back. And I started to get the most painful headache that I've ever got. I remember crying and feeling so dizzy, never having felt that much pain before. The next day, I saw that same coyote again outside. The same coyote. It was bigger than most I'd seen, and it stared at me unblinking. I heard the same whistling. It had patches of fur missing and looking at me, and it made me feel so sick. I closed and locked the window and left the room. I thought of every mundane possibility. And us natives don't throw around the word skinwalker at every creepy experience. I promise. I just can't find an explanation for why I felt so bad and icky. Honestly, reading that one out loud again still freaked me out. Alright, I saved the best for last for you. Number 1. Our final entry is one last story from user Lisha Ninja to round out our Skinwalker story collection, and honestly, I think it's the spookiest one of the bunch, definitely the most high-octane energy action story. Let me waste no more time introducing, and let's get into it. Lisha Ninja writes, "This is a story my family told me when I was growing up. We live in a rural community on the Navajo reservation. My aunt and her 2 brothers were coming home alone when my grandparents had left for the evening to attend a chapter house meeting. They were in the house, and like many people from the res, didn't have electricity. It'd been dark outside for about an hour and my aunt and uncles were getting ready for bed. Outside they heard noises, as if someone moving outside. My uncle went out to the front window and saw someone outside of his truck, which was out of the ordinary to say the least because the closest neighbor was miles away, and my aunt and uncle were frightened. They knew they had to take action. So my uncle took the rifle and readied himself. They flung open the door and aimed at the dark figure. The figure turned and started to walk towards them, unfazed by the drawn long arm. My uncle squeezed the trigger but nothing came out. The figure drew closer and closer and my aunt began to smell the stench of a dead body. It was so strange she started to gag. My uncle continued to pull at the trigger but nothing was coming out and the shadowy figure began to approach. Off in the distance, my grandparents were returning and their headlights shone up the road. This figure looked at the lights and started to move away. My uncle pushed forward to the truck with the rifle drawn. My grandfather got out of the car and my uncle pointed at the truck. My grandfather immediately ran inside, grabbed a handful of ashes, and rubbed it over the gun's barrel. Whatever it was didn't expect this weapon to go off. My grandfather and uncle chased after the creature, and my uncle swears that when the headlights flickered on it, he saw a woman, but running on all fours the way a bear would. My grandfather eventually stopped the truck, and as they neared the ditch, it drops about 20 feet. He got out and began to yell in Navajo. My uncle says that he was yelling about a local woman. He yelled that he wasn't scared, and that he knew it was her, and to leave his family alone. A few days passed, and there was news that the woman that my grandfather was yelling about had passed away. I've always been told that if you know who the Skinwalker is, you say their name, and it'll end them. Whew. Number 5, the deer. Coming up first today on our list of Skinwalker footage that has everybody double checking the family pets and other assorted wildlife to make sure they haven't been replaced with any sinister shape-shifting shamans is this little clip from TikTok of a member of the Curvidae family acting real bizarre. That's a fancy word for deer. I want to make sure you learn something every day. Roll the clip. Now someone is out in the woods late at night hunting by themselves, which if any horror movie has ever taught me anything at all, not a good idea. I mean, they clearly know it's not a good idea either, since the caption of the video is always hunt with others, something isn't right with this deer, and that much is obvious. The deer is staring into the camera with empty eyes. It's got that total deer in the headlights look, probably because it's a deer in the headlights. Is that where that saying comes from? You'd think the buck might be scared of the car pulled in front of it or the people filming, but instead it just seems to stare back with that empty-eyed stare. Now when it turns its head, we can see the thing's bottom jaw hanging open, limp, as if it's barely being held together by decaying tissues or if the deer's reanimated like a zombie. Now, this could be a shape-shifting shaman of Dene folklore, or a little bit more likely, and you know I like to play the skeptic, it could be a deer suffering from a horrible disease called epizootic hemorrhagic, which occurs when a deer is bitten by a midge, that's a disgusting little mosquito-like bug carrying the virus, which wreaks all sorts of havoc to the deer's neurological systems, causing it to act abnormally and very scary, and I would wager that most footage you find online of a deer acting strange could be traced back to this. Another common symptom of EHD is the deer's tongue swelling to uncomfortable sizes, which would leave its maw agape and sort of give off that terrifying look of the deer's jaw sort of like hanging around by a thread there. Now, EHD isn't considered a risk to humans, so you don't have to worry about it too much, but if you were a deer watching this video right now, oh buddy, if you were a deer, I tell you to be careful, okay? It's midge season, and you don't want your legacy as a deer to be ending up in one of these videos. And if you're looking for more videos of all sorts of bizarre things that no one can explain, well, that's what Top 5 Scary trades in spades. We've got so much of that. We got aliens, ghouls, cryptids, goblins galore, anything freaky you can think of, we've got 2 to 4 videos on it. So hit subscribe, please make sure you ring that little bell as well so you're not missing a single beat, but do that at the end of this video if you wouldn't mind so much, because I got 4 more clips of weird Skinwalker things around the net that I would just love to show you. Number 4. Wade Lanagan. Coming up next is going to be this video that was posted to TikTok by users Wade Lanagan, showing a pretty horrifying suburban little scene. Something that I found kind of interesting whenever I do these videos, I do research, is that a lot of mythology and folk tales about skinwalkers sort of incorporate how bad they want to worm their way into your house. Makes sense, that's where you live, I guess, and they want to get at you. Now obviously you should do just about whatever it takes to prevent this from happening. In this clip, we see exactly that in practice. A young mother and her child are at home when they're apprehended by someone, or perhaps more accurately, something. Something that's slamming at the door. Now, in this clip, it certainly looks like a person, but it screeches like a monster out of your worst nightmare. So some sort of ear-scratching scream that shouldn't be coming out of any living thing. And it seems to be covered in some sort of red liquid, although maybe it's just me, but it does look a little bit like Cheeto dust. I'm not saying a skinwalker can't eat a little flaming hot Cheeto now and again. I don't really know what they eat, actually. I've always assumed they eat man, but maybe they're omnivorous and like a snack here and there. The strange being runs off, but before the mother and child can catch their breath, we hear that same familiar knocking slamming away on the door, and the video cuts out. But if you really like that video, don't worry, I'm not gonna post for top 5 twice, and you wanted to see more and more about the family, going onto their TikTok account reveals a 4-part series of videos chronicling their tracking of a possible skinwalker and their eventual pursuit by one. Now these clips, you know, not gonna lie to you, these are definitely just a home production, but I wanted to put them up because I thought they were fun, you know? I talk about horror movies on the channel all the time, and what is a TikTok if not a very, very short horror movie for people who've got places to be? I've got nothing but love for anyone making horror content at home, so if you were interested in this and you liked it, give the channel a check out. Wade Lanogan, they got lots more spooky paranormal stuff on TikTok for you to enjoy.
Number 3 on this list is the white mask. This one is kind of similar to the last one we looked at, but instead of a pale white face, it seemed as if the creature was wearing a white mask. Ranker says, in Hunt for the Skinwalker, George Knapp and Colm Kelleher relay the stories of those who came into contact with skinwalkers near Native American tribal lands. One account from a New Mexico highway patrol officer states that while patrolling the highways of New Mexico, he saw a skinwalker on 2 separate occasions. In his first encounter, a creature wearing a white mask appeared next to his window, seemingly attaching itself to the car door. But then he realized it was simply running beside the vehicle, keeping pace at highway speeds. A few days later, and around the same area, he encountered the creature again. What makes this tale even more intriguing is that at least one other officer claimed to have seen the same ghoulish being while patrolling the area. Maybe it was actually a white mask that our friend saw in the previous entry instead of the white face he described. Either way, this one seems dangerous as all holy hell. To be able to run with a car going on the highway, yeah, that is pretty far from natural, guys. I'd say that considering there were multiple witnesses here, this is probably some of the best proof we have that these creatures are legit. Number 2 on this list is No Ordinary Girl. This is a story, as you may have guessed, about a girl that probably wasn't a girl. Ranker says, the tale of terror comes all the way from Australia. While walking her dogs out in the Australian bush, a woman encountered a fearful sight. She was enjoying the trail when suddenly her 2 dogs started barking uncontrollably and becoming extremely agitated. Soon she saw what appeared to be a small female child no older than 7. The child had her back to the woman, who was only a bit startled at first, as she believed the child was just part of a camping party. However, when the girl turned around, her eyes were lifeless and entirely black. Before the woman could make a break for it, the creature let out an ear-splitting howl and ran off into the bush, never to be seen again. She was left wondering if the child she saw was someone pulling a prank on her, or if it really was a shape-shifting skinwalker. She may never know. Maybe the scariest part about this one is that if this story is true, it means skinwalkers can be found outside of America. Conventional wisdom has kind of said that these creatures are only in North America, but that might not be true. If they're all the way in Australia, then they could literally be anywhere. Hopefully it was just a prank, but based on the circumstances, I kinda doubt it. And finally, number 1 on this list is the 6 Men. This is another story about how some type of beasts were able to keep up with a car. Ranker says, my friend's mission region had a reservation within its boundaries. However, it was relatively far from where he was serving. On one occasion, him and his mission companion were asked to travel further than usual to meet some investigators. This took them near the reservation. On their way home, their car ran out of gas, and it wasn't until late at night that they were able to continue the journey home. My friend chose a different route that took him through some back roads in an attempt to get home sooner. He told us he was driving above the speed limit when he noticed movement in the woods lining the road. Because coyotes were common in the area, he took little notice at first. Then he looked out the window and slammed on the brakes. The sudden stop jolted his companion awake, who immediately wanted to know what was wrong. My friend was shaken shaken and he said he would tell him once they got home. He asked him to say a prayer. By the time they made it home, his companion was dying to know what had happened. My friend told him, "I looked down at the road next to the car and saw 6 men running on all fours, keeping up with the car. I was driving 40 miles an hour. 6 dudes on all fours keeping up with a car going 40 miles an hour. Usain Bolt, the fastest man of our generation in his best race ever, reached a top speed of 27.33 miles per hour. That's the fastest man in the world running the fastest he's ever run on 2 legs, and he still doesn't come close to touching what the car was doing. One thing is definitely clear from doing this video, guys. Skinwalkers, if they are real, are clearly fast as hell. And if one decides that it wants to target you, I don't know if you're going to be able to escape. Number 5 on this list is the orange eyes. As a decently recent university graduate, this story is pretty triggering to me. User John shared his story of how a relaxing midnight stroll turned terrifying when he came face to face with 2 skinwalkers. According to his chilling story, John was out late one summer night. While listening to music and enjoying the cool weather, he walked near a large empty field that was adjacent to a college campus. Suddenly, he felt something staring at him. Shining his flashlight out into the darkness, he saw 2 sets of glowing orange eyes staring back at him. The eyes were at least 7 feet off the ground and stared at him without blinking once. John made a mad dash for safety. As he was running, he turned back to see one of the creatures chasing him. John became even more frightened when he got a better glimpse of the fast-moving creature behind him. It looked like a giant wolf. Quickening his pace, John reached his home safely, but he remains fearful of the monsters he saw that night, which he believes were skinwalkers. I titled this entry Orange Eyes because that, plus the fact that they were 7 feet off the ground, are the biggest things that stick out to me here. A wolf's eyes aren't typically bright orange. They can be a mild hue of that color, but I doubt that it was a mild hue if that's the first thing that stuck out to him in the night. Not to mention the fact that these creatures were 7 feet off the ground and how unnatural that is. Even if for some reason a wolf stood on its hind legs, it still wouldn't be that tall. Whatever it was that was after John that evening doesn't sound like the friendliest of creatures if you ask me. He's probably pretty lucky to have made it out alive. Number 4 on this list is the white face. This story is especially scary because it seems like the skinwalker is actually stalking our victim. Ranker says, "My roommate has told me this story a few times and I want to see if anyone else has had similar experiences. As he tells it, he was driving home super late at night, maybe around 3 or 4 a.m. in a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona, both times that this occurred. The first time he was driving alone on a road that has an open field to the left of it when out of nowhere a black figure on all fours bounds up out of the field and across the road in front of his car. As soon as the figure got to the other side of the road, it stops with inhuman quickness, turns around, and looks directly at my roommate. He described the figure as looking simian, completely black except for the face. The creature's face was a stark white human face. Not white as in Caucasian, but white as snow. This happened again a few weeks later, but this time the creature was sitting in a tree. As his car approached, it climbed down the tree, again with inhuman quickness, bounded across the road, stopped on a dime, and turned around and made eye contact with him. This time he had a friend in the car who also saw it and began freaking out. It was the same exact thing as the first time, a simian black body with a snow white expressionless human face. My roommate, ever the curious one, turned the car around and began searching for the creature, but it was nowhere to be seen. What has a totally black and creature-like body, but also a white as snow pale human face? I'll answer that one for you guys. A skinwalker. Scariest part about this one, like I said earlier, is the fact that it went out of its way to find this same guy again. I find it hard to believe that he just happened to stumble upon this creature just out of coincidence. I think it's far more likely that the creature was looking out for this guy and putting itself into spots that it might run into him. Really not a pleasant thought if you think about it.
Number 3, do you believe? Coming in next today is going to be this clip that was posted to TikTok by a user by the name of Do You Believe? Do you believe? We do. That's exactly why we're here today, baby. We believe. Now, this video takes place in the pitch black of night, looking in someone's backyard as someone is staring into the eyes of what looks like a neighborhood dog. But if you've learned anything from this video so far, it's that looks can be fairly deceiving. The dog isn't the uploaders, as they don't recognize the animal and they're a bit unnerved by Fido coming forward towards them. The eyes seem to be staring deep through the internet and directly into my soul just a little bit. The dog keeps approaching slowly before finally jumping out at the person recording the video and also coincidentally sending me recoiling about 5 feet back from my screen and my phone flying across the room. No relation though. Now this clip definitely had people talking though, with just as many people suggesting that it could just be a dog doing what a dog does and being kind of silly in a backyard. I could certainly see that. Dogs are known to be silly, but this dog is definitely creepy. I don't know if they taught this dog to behave like this, but the way it stalks has me scratching my head just a little bit. Now there are some commenters on this video who say that they find this video cuter than they do scary, which is definitely fair. It is a cute dog, if not a scary one. So as always, whenever there's a bit of unknown in the air, there's a little room for discussion and speculation, I toss it over to you, my faithful YouTube commenter gang. Is this just a regular old Labrador with its eyes hitting the camera just right? Or is there something about this old dog that ain't what it seems? Could this be a bit of a Cujo situation? Does this thing know any new tricks like shape-shifting? Number 2, creepy reel. Coming up next is going to be this clip that was posted to TikTok by the user Creepy Reel. Creepy Reel, well, I do videos that are real creepy. Thank you. Oh no, please, I'm here all week. That pun is what my degree paid for. Reading is not what my degree paid for. I didn't go to school for book learning, I went to school for talking. Now this next video is short and sweet. We see someone getting chased by something. We don't really get too good a look, but honestly that could be a mercy. What we can see is that the person chasing our cameraman seems to be human, but not doing a perfect job of it. The caption calls it a human disguised as a skinwalker. Now, I found something kind of interesting about this video. I thought it was pretty creepy, gave me the heebie-jeebies, but as I was going through the comments on this one, I noticed that every third comment was someone saying this isn't a skinwalker, but rather a djinn. In fact, seriously, if you look at the link, almost every comment is alleging this, as if this is a very known practice and we're all fools for making the mistake. So I did a little digging and I thought I'd share what I learned. Jinn are thought to be spirits, creatures that are thought to originate from Islamic folktales. They are considered to be invisible creatures, but can take the form of humans as well as various animals, predominantly slimy things like snakes. They're pretty similar to skinwalkers, all things considered, but while a skinwalker is a shape-shifting shaman cast off from Dene society, a djinn was born into the world of spirit. Interestingly too, djinn are thought to neither be evil or good, but just rather are, and each are their own unique entity with their own desires and drives. It's thought that you can only see a djinn if they want you to see them, so if this creature really is a djinn chasing our cameraman, well, there must be some reason for it. Of course, the possible reason for it is that it is TikTok, and downright likely that this is someone trying to get a few clicks on TikTok, or just something scary that happened and made for some great views. Regardless, made my hair stand on end a little bit. I hope it freaked you out ever so slightly too. And if you know a little bit more about djinns and the difference between djinns and skinwalkers, please share some of that information with the casual crypt keeper. I love to learn, and you all are a great source of information for me. And number 1, wilderness survival. Coming in at this number 1 spot is this very strange clip that was uploaded. Let me tell you, if you're looking for weirdness on the internet, yeah, Top 5 Scary is an amazing place. I do some great work finding it for you, but TikTok really is the place to be. It's the strangest black hole on the internet for a reason. This clip was going around the front page recently, and it's not hard to see why. In it, we can see what looks like a fairly dated old analog VHS footage of what I can make out as some countryside. I'm not sure where though. I'm not a geo-guesser guy. The sights of the American countryside sure would be beautiful if it weren't for the gut-wrenching screaming that you can hear in the background as someone is begging and pleading for anyone, please, anyone to come help. But as the camera pans and zooms, there doesn't seem to be anyone around for miles except for whoever is filming and a single mysterious person standing alone in a field, completely ignorant to it all, as if they don't even hear it. In fact, the person standing there doesn't seem to really even be there, you know what I mean? Sort of gently swaying in the breeze like a scarecrow. Could it be that this is a skinwalker and the sounds we hear are the last panicked screams it heard from one of its victims? It's considered a trait of skinwalkers that not only are they able to take on the form of any animal or human that they wish, but they're also able to mimic other humans' speech or animal cries with perfect clarity. And that pain in the person's screams are super creepy. And if you thought this clip was super duper creepy, I've got fantastic news for you. This clip was an excerpt from Gemini Home Entertainment, a fantastic series of online internet horror videos presented as an anthology of old VHS tapes, much like the super successful VHS film series, if you know those. This one is from the one titled Wilderness Survival Guide, and it's honestly one of the better ones in the series. I would super recommend it. Definitely if you like any of this sort of stuff, like analog horror, skinwalkers, crediting artists, any of that stuff, give it a watch. Alright, number 5. Now before we dive in proper, I did want to take a quick aside to point out that traditionally a lot of Dene people don't particularly like sharing stories of skinwalkers, as it is a fairly taboo subject. With that in mind, I thank the storytellers who did share the ones I was able to find, and want to stress though with this video, we are just hoping to entertain. Now with that in mind, let's get into it. Our first story was posted to us on a Skinwalker subreddit. I clipped it a little bit, but the rest of it's intact. Let me start off by saying that my wife doesn't believe in paranormal things. We've got cats, and one of them likes to be a rebel, jumping onto counters and meowing as loud as he can for attention. He does this all night. The other night, after some drinks and video games, I decided to head to bed. When I woke up, my wife had wide eyes and a nervous look. I asked her what happened, and she said that at around 3 a.m. in the morning, she was woken up by a noise that sounded like one of the cats howling, except that the meow sounded more like a person trying to imitate a cat, sounding like it was saying hello. Meow. Yeah, that's what it would sound like. A loud bang came at the door, and then a notification went off on the motion sensor. And when she told me this, I checked my phone, and sure enough, there was a notification for motion at around 2:52 a.m. I asked her why she didn't wake me, and she said she didn't want it to hear her. Everything was making me uncomfortable about this story, so I set the home security alarm around 9 p.m. and I didn't turn it off until I walked the dog this morning. We slept with all the animals in the bedroom with the door closed, so whatever tripped it was not one of our pets, and it made me think it was a skinwalker. But I'm just paranoid. I checked all the rooms when I got up. I don't know why, but my wife was scared so badly. We bought this house brand new and no one lived here before me. But when I'm alone, I feel like something's off and I'm being watched. I got home from errands today, and when I went to hang up a shirt, I noticed a board that covers our attic had been moved. I asked my wife what happened and she said she has no idea. We're going to my mother-in-law's today to get some sage. My wife said burning it should keep whatever is around us away. Well, what do you think, my gang? Just paranoid? Or is there perhaps something suspicious sneaking around those woods? And my friends, if you're looking for more great creepy stories narrated by this blonde mug, you already know where to go. Top 5 Scary is the place to be. We've got a little something freaky for everyone. Cryptids, aliens, conspiracies, true crime, horror movies. If it's scary, we got a video or two on it. So hit subscribe, click that little bell, and don't miss a single thing. But do it at the end of this video, okay? I got more Skinwalker stories coming for you right now. Number 4. Our next story also comes to us from the Skinwalker subreddit. I mean, where else would Skinwalker stories come from, really? When my mother was young, she lived with my grandmother in a place full of wood. There were more woods than houses. You wouldn't really call it a street or a neighborhood. It was more a reserved area where the houses were all well away from each other. And there were so many trees and tall bushes that at night everything was dark. My mom had a dog named Toby. One night my mother and my grandmother were at home as usual, and they heard noise in the logs stacked outside. The lumber was for renovating the house, and it was right next to Toby's doghouse. My grandma went to see what he was doing, and when she went to scold him for messing with the lumber, she saw Toby's head come up and look at her. But he lifted his head so high that my grandmother saw what really was looking at her. She described what she saw as a person walking on all fours with their feet and hands touching the ground, but covered in black fur and a dog's head. Before returning home running, she noticed the real Toby was scared to death in his doghouse. Days later, Toby started to get sick. He wasn't eating properly and wouldn't leave the house. He was so scared that he'd go to the bathroom inside. He started to go blind, his fur started to fall out, and it wasn't long before he passed away out of fear. The same thing happened to a neighbor's dog, and maybe most concerningly, the chickens from another neighbor were plucked from the coop and split open. My mom and I talked about that time, and she told me that the thing tried to copy Toby's appearance, and the blindness was how they stun who they're going to eat. Number 3, that ain't no book. And coming in right at our sweet little middle spot, here's a clip that I didn't think was the best, but I also didn't think was the worst. It's a perfectly neutral clip, perfect middle child of a clip. In this very short clip, we see someone driving through the backwoods late at night, real children of the corn kind of situation. Nothing but big stalks, for miles and miles around, which is perfect actually. All the better for creatures of the night to stalk you in. That pun was a bit laborious, but we got there. In the clip, it seems like the driver notices a buck acting a bit strangely until the camera zooms in ever so slightly and you realize immediately, just like the title said, that ain't no buck. We see a bizarre creature on its hind legs running far, far away from the person filming, which I'm sure the person filming wasn't upset about at all. Now this creature looks the most like what I think people imagine a skinwalker looks like when they imagine it. Some wretched mix of flesh and animal skin running through the night hunting for prey. I'm actually not sure what this could be. I mean, it could be somebody, again, on some substances running through the woods late at night. A lot of these, I've always got a possibility for what these creatures could be. I like to think I have a reasonable explanation for everything, but this, I don't know. All I can tell you for sure is that ain't no buck. It's an unexplained sighting caught on camera, after all. You want me to try and explain the unexplained? That's the whole purpose of it. They're unexplained. You simply can't explain them. Number 2, the corvid. Coming up next on our list of strange sightings of shape-shifting shamans is this video uploaded to TikTok of a raven that's got people saying, "No more!" Like nevermore, quoth the raven, Edgar Allan Poe. I don't know. Sometimes I'm struggling for jokes. It was uploaded to TikTok by user Lindsay Ivan, and I don't know, something about her, she seems familiar, like I've heard her name before. Anyway, in the video, we get an up-close and beautiful personal view of a beautiful raven with a very unnerving voice. It sounds as if it's got the voice of a human. Now, skinwalkers are said to be shape-shifting witches who can take the form of any animal they please and can mimic many voices. So is that what's happening here? Is that what this footage is? You sure that's why? Well, this next video I wanted to include solely because I wanted to debunk it, 1, and 2, take it as a small window of education for something I am very passionate about. Ravens are corvids, birds that are known for having hooked beaks and bristly feathers. They're usually black, although the blue jay is a very famous notable exception. Crows, ravens, magpies, jackdaws, jays, these are all corvids. Now, what makes corvids so interesting, and one of my favorite kind of birds out there ever, is they are unbelievably intelligent, with many ornithologists suggesting that ravens and crows, not only the smartest birds on the planet, but very well maybe like top 5 smartest animals out there. Among crows and ravens' many parlor tricks is that they're able to remember human faces. They understand the concept of causality. A raven understands what cause and effect is. Ravens can count, they've been shown making tools, they give gifts, they solve puzzles, and they can mimic sounds they hear with alarming clarity like a parrot. Everyone thinks of a parrot as a bird that can talk, but a crow and a raven can do it as well. So this beautiful bird in this clip is showing off his vocal range by mimicking human speech that he'd heard in a wondrous display of intellect from one of nature's most staggeringly impressive creatures. Or, of course, it could be a shape-shifting warlock of Dene legend that is grossly misattributed to almost every single random encounter on TikTok because the name sounds cool and people don't research things. Could be either one. Number 1, a scream in the woods. Coming up in the final spot today in our list of possible shapeshifters we just can't explain on camera is this viral video that's been making the rounds for its unexplained and terrifying nature. Now, this clip was originally uploaded under the name Strange Sounds While Mushroom Hunting. That sounds lovely. By user Tomorrow's Garden. Clicking through on the channel, we can see that they mostly stick to naturalist content, and when they're not doing that, they're reviewing the exciting world of stud finders and mouse traps. So supernatural hoaxes doesn't really seem to be a big part of their channel's identity, which is what makes this clip that much more real. In the clip, we see someone walking around a beautiful little forest as the user is checking out what's new with the local mycelium. Interrupting the bird song and the other beautiful sounds of the forest is a shrill scream that seems like it's come directly from hell, piercing not just your ears but your soul. Downright agonizing. Let's roll a clip of just that shrill shrieking. Pretty scary, right? Sounds like something that has crawled its way out of the depths of the pits of Tartarus and is deeply upset about it. Now, what unnerves me is how much you can, like, maybe this doesn't make sense, hear a human scream inside the animal scream, if you follow me. The best part of this video, though, is that after the scream peters out, realizing that he's probably now hanging around somewhere where some sort of horrific flesh beast is lingering, he announces to himself very quietly, "I think it's time to go now." He says it so quietly and normally, it's hilarious. Unlike every like horror movie guy ever, he just calmly decides to get out, and that's why he survived to upload this video. And Tomorrow's Garden, we thank you for it. Our first sighting today is a short clip that's been being passed around the paranormal corners of the internet, and for good reason. Could very well have a recording of one of these wretched creatures caught on tape. Let me roll just a little bit of it for you and see if you can decide for yourself just what's going on down there. It's hard to say exactly what's happening here without proper context. Unfortunately, the original person who posted it didn't add a lot. We can see a bunch of animals running through the forest, migrating, or perhaps they're running to try and escape something, namely the very strange entity running behind them. We can see someone or something running swiftly, looking human-esque, but it feels more like something's doing an impression of a human, something that's wearing a human skin, if you catch my drift. Doesn't quite move how a man should. Its arms appear unnaturally long and out of proportion. It seems like a feral creature living amongst the animals in disguise. Now, not everyone agrees with what this creature could be. Some commenters have suggested that this could be a sighting of a rake, which is also sometimes called a crawler, a similarly reported cryptid. It's a long, skinny, humanoid-looking thing, usually with like pale or gray skin that lives out in the wood. Now, there are a bunch of differences between these creatures. For one thing, a rake is not a shapeshifter of any kind, whereas one of these is said to be able to take the appearance of any creature it wishes. It should also be noted that when we talk about skinwalkers, traditionally they're not actually cryptids or monsters, but rather a human who's capable of witchcraft. It's hard to keep all your scary humanoid cryptids straight in a line, but that's why you got Top 5 Scary to help out where you can. And if you're looking for way more scary stories of cryptids, well, my friend, you are already in the right place. If cryptids aren't your jam, we've got a video on just about every single freaky thing you can think of under the sun and above it. We got conspiracies, we got aliens, we got monsters, monster movies, you name it. Hit subscribe, hit that little bell so you don't miss a single scream, but you do that at the end of this video, okay? I got way more creature sightings coming for you right now. Number 4, another video sighting for you coming up. Well, of sorts, you'll see. This next one was uploaded to the internet about a month ago to Reddit, titled "Navajo depiction of a skinwalker on video looking to plant a curse." Hey, you might want to check that your computer's got good antivirus software just in case some of that curse sort of leaks through the internet. That does happen sometimes. So keep that in mind as we roll this next clip. Maybe draw a little salt circle around where you're sitting just in case. Smudge your house with sage, I would advise. Now, this footage comes from a documentary, so it's not exactly the most real depiction of one of these creatures, but it's fun to watch. It's a documentary on the beast of native folklore and showcases a depiction or a dramatization of what a live sighting face to face with one could look like. It's pretty horrifying to see such a realistic depiction. I think you imagine these creatures and it's pretty scary, but then you see it like in a tableau like this and you realize just how scary it is. We see a bunch of livestock running in a flock and a shadow darting between them as if your eyes are playing tricks on you. Is this just another shadow of the night? Or is this an animal? Just your eyes? We then see the homeowner readying himself to defend against the particular attack. Now, something unnerving about the legend of these creatures is just how little there is said to be done against them. Some stories say that the way to fell one of these entities is by learning its name and shouting it against it. Now, some others say that traditional weapons have next to no use against one. Maybe you'll slow it down just a little bit, but that you need rituals and otherworldly magic to be able to actually stand a chance. And of course, there are some nihilistic stories that say once the creature has set its sights on you, well, it's kind of hopeless and there's not really anything you can do until your judgment comes. So the best advice for me, I would say, is to just never run into one at all, and if you even start to think you hear one, just book it out of Dodge. Number 3, MotoOwens. MotoOwens is a popular YouTuber and influencer known for BMX and motorcycling videos. Owen's a motorcycle enthusiast, and so his channel primarily focuses on motorcycle content, reviews of new bikes, advice for riders, general discussion about the wild world of motorcycling. But that's not all. He's also got videos about his personal experiences and his travels on 2 wheels, including almost coming dangerously close to death while in the woods while filming a video. You take a quick look at this clip posted to his Instagram, and you tell me what you think you hear or see. Probably something scary. While cycling, Owen comes across some bizarre sounds in the woods that he believes sounds like someone screaming out for help. It's hard to say that's not exactly what it sounds like, because it does sound like someone shrieking, but that could be something mimicking human calls. Now, more than a few people in the comments suggested this could be a mountain lion, because allegedly mountain lion calls sound like a shrieking woman. That's something hikers should be aware of. I've never heard that before. Now, I've got to say, Owen is a pretty wise guy, because as soon as he starts hearing mysterious screaming in the wild that he can't explain, instead of poking around the woods and trying to figure out what's happening, he rather intelligently chooses to get on his bike, rev up, and gets the heck out of there before he could get a chance to be introduced to whatever cryptid could have been lying out there. So what do you think, gang? Was that just a bobcat or a mountain lion out in the woods, or did he come very, very close to something he would not have wanted to see? Number 2, the proof is out there. Our next sighting comes to us today from the History Channel of all places. I guess in a way, it could be considered modern day history, right? It details a sighting by 2 Canadian security guards in 2021 of a possible sighting with this creature up close and personal. You see, it was May 2021 in Saskatchewan, and 2 security guards working on a Cree reservation were driving home after a 12-hour shift when they spotted something bizarre on the drive home. They recorded it, and we've got a bit of footage for you here to play. We'll roll it now and let us know what you think you can see down below. It's very difficult to make out entirely, but if you're really looking, and the video does outline it a bit, which helps, you can see a translucent, ghostly figure appearing in the clearing while they're driving. This figure seems formless, almost ethereal in a way, as if it's not even a solid creature. It blends in with the grass so well, it almost seems as if it's part of the scenery or wildlife that's straight up just come to life and sprouted out of the ground. Now, when this clip was posted, commenters were going wild because they thought this could be definitive proof of one of these shape-shifting evil medicine men caught on tape. Now, invisibility, or, being see-through, isn't usually described as being an ability of one of these creatures. I think people might be getting them confused with the Predator from the awesome action movie series. An important distinction to note when we talk about these things is that they're not cryptids per se. And shouldn't be talked about as such or considered like they're a creature or a wild animal, contrary to how it might seem, but rather the legend of these things is that they're shamans and medicine men who have isolated themselves from the rest of the tribe and way of life and are engaging in dark, unholy practices. Now, that's not to say that invisibility is totally impossible. It could be within the realm of these things. I think if you're shape-shifting, theoretically, you could also be turning invisible, but I'm just saying they have enough tricks up their sleeve already. Shape-shifting feels like enough of a cool party trick. You don't need to also add being invisible on that. Your resume's full enough. You got the job. Number 1, the Washington sighting. Now, our next sighting comes to us from Reddit, posted to the Skinwalker subreddit. It's a first-hand account of a Washington local describing what they thought they saw on a camping trip with their partner. The poster describes going camping with her boyfriend, the 2 of them having significant camping experience. They both grew up in a rural area surrounded by farmland, so they're no stranger to the outdoor. And they decided for a fun, romantic weekend camping trip to go camping about 45 minutes away from Yakima around indigenous territory. They pull up to the lake at about 10:45, and immediately on rolling up, the poster said she got a terrible feeling, like deep in her stomach. She said it wasn't just like kind of a bad feeling about things, but a profoundly bad vibe, saying as if it felt like there was evil radiating deeply throughout her. I personally would turn the car around if that happened to me, but hey, power to you. She realizes as she's looking around the campsite, the reason she feels so strongly about this place is because she's had a dream about it before. It's not just deja vu or something, but something she had seen in her mind's eyes. She tells her boyfriend that she's dreamt this place, everything about it, every little detail, and goes into detail, talking about seeing a pale, creepy face with reflective eyes staring at her through the trees and then running as fast as she could. Pretty scary dream. So they pull up to the campsite eventually. Her boyfriend lights a smoke and they sit around the campfire and soon after start to hear screaming. But she says it doesn't sound like human screaming the way you expect it to. It sounds like someone had distorted and spliced together screams from multiple sources into one, harmonizing perfectly. Now, moments later, this scream appears again, only this time the scream feels even closer. Her boyfriend puts his smoke out and grabs a weapon from their truck, and they wait in the tent for the rest of the night. When they wake up that next morning and check on their site, the cigar had been taken. Now, in some legends, when you hear these creatures far away, when you hear the voice screaming, it means they're closer than you think. So what do you think? Did these two get lucky? Was it just paranoia in the woods setting in? Or did they narrowly avoid being the main characters in the next Blair Witch movie? And that's about all she wrote for this video, my ghouls and my goblins. Number 5, weird deer. Coming up first today on our list of strange sightings is going to be this first clip, which was lovingly uploaded to TikTok with the caption, WTF deer. Now, of course, we all know what that means, but if you're not familiar with internet acronyms, WTF stands for, well, that's fantastic. And when you see the condition this deer is in, you'll probably say WTF too. In the clip, we can see a deer getting the heck out of Dodge, scampering out of the woods like somebody just flatlined Bambi's mom. It looks frightened, as if it knows something is up. Well, not even a few seconds after we're introduced to our deer, whatever has this deer so scared that it's causing to freeze up like a deer in headlights, a second deer comes running out with a head that's twisted every wrong way. The thing is checking its rear views while also looking forward. The snarled deer then charges forward into the night, hopefully to never be seen again. Now, when this was uploaded, the intent was that this was a skinwalker caught on camera. Skinwalkers, of course, being Dene or Navajo shamans who have been cast out of society for their practice of black magic and unsavory communion with spirits. They're outcasts from society, exiles. And they're traditionally said to be able to take the form of animals if they wish. They're considered witches, not cryptids, and it should be stated too that indigenous people don't particularly enjoy these stories being repackaged. Now, in this clip, it seems to me like this is a deer with a bad neck injury, or maybe a manufacturing defect of some kind, struggling to survive. Now, while anything on this big blue marble is possible, to me, it's more likely this is just a deer who's probably in extreme pain than it is a shape-shifting witch. Personally, if I could shapeshift, I would shapeshift into a deer that had a regular neck. You let me know what you'd shapeshift into. And if you're looking for more footage of shape-shifting animals, creepy crawlers, ghouls and goblins, ghosts, conspiracies, true crime, fake crime, and a whole lot more, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. Seriously, if you can think it up, we've got a video or two on it. So click on through, hit subscribe, please make sure to hit that little bell so you don't miss anything, but if you do me a favor, do that at the end of this video, because I got 4 more weird things found in the woods coming up for you right now. Number 4, friendly neighbor. Our next clip is one that maybe you've seen before if you're like me and spend the days trolling the web for supernatural content, as it's a pretty freaky one. Now, there's some skepticism all around this script, you know? I'm naturally a bit of a skeptic. I'm more of a Scully than a Mulder. But this next clip is pure weird. We can see someone or something crawling around in the woods. Now, it looks human, but isn't that the whole point, to look deceptively human? Well, whatever this humanoid is, we get an up-close and personal look at this thing crawling in an extremely comfortable way that doesn't look human. Humanoid moves like a zombie, moving like a puppet with tangled strings. Now, I would think a shapeshifter, if they got caught by someone, would transform into a wolf or a cougar or maybe a hawk and get on out of there, right? And maybe we're catching this creature at a bad time, mid-transformation, as we see the humanoid attempt to build up a bit of momentum by getting down on all fours and trying to accelerate forward. Now, I do feel like I have to address the elephant in the room here. I don't want to talk down to you or play ignorant. Now, this could be a shape-shifting witch of legend, but we should also address the very real possibility that this clip of someone shirtless walking around on all fours behaving extremely odd in what looks to be a backwoods part of Virginia, maybe. This could very easily be someone on substances, or all of the substances, entirely possible by the way that little walk is going. This looks like there is a cocktail of things going on in that head right now. Whether or not this is a supernatural threat or a chemical one, we might not know, but I think we can all agree, completely horrifying, and I would prefer to never have to interact with that person. Number 3. Our next story comes to us from a website called darkstories.org. Let me tell you, there's some dark stories on here, but it was a fascinating little walk to go through. Let's take a look look at our first one. The user writes, about almost a year ago, I used to live in a somewhat isolated neighborhood that was in the high desert of California. I lived in a dirt road, and since the homes were so proud out, wildlife wasn't an uncommon thing. You'd see rabbits, coyotes, snakes, and on rare occurrences sometimes deer. But once you lived out there for a while, you got used to animals roaming around during the late hours. I'm indigenous, so most of the time I actually enjoy seeing wildlife close to my home. But I have always known of a creature my tribe refers to as the Skinwalker. And I'm not supposed to say that word, but it was typed, so hopefully there's no bad omen. Hey, is it fine if I say it? Can we look into that? Can we get somebody on that? Okay, back to it. The house I lived in had a very large backyard and gravel mixed with dirt driveway, leaving a lot of open space to look out from. My room was at the front of the house, and every night if I had my window open, I'd find myself staring out at the front gate of our driveway. It was quiet every night, unless you heard coyote howls. There was a lot of strange things up there. At the time I was homeschooled, and I was sitting in the office in silence doing my work. In the silence I heard a knock by the window that I couldn't see out of. I couldn't see through because we didn't have blinds or curtain, we had sliding doors as windows instead. So I turned my head to look at the window and it went silent. But then I thought I heard someone or something walking. Months later I changed rooms with the office and I was looking out that same window that I heard those footsteps, except it was night. I saw a figure on the side of the gate that looked like it was a coyote, but it was too long. And the way it was moving looked like it was something that wasn't from this world, as if it was a human trying to imitate a dog. It stood there as still as a statue until it stood up and tried to climb over the gate. I shut the barn door and I heard it running before I closed the gate. And that was the last time I ever kept my windows open at night. Honestly, probably good advice. A little bit of cold air is not worth that. Number 2, the shopping mall. This next one is a wild one. It's titled Skinwalker at a shopping mall. Hey, I guess they want to check out the lush sales sometimes too. I get it, take care of that fur. It starts by saying, I'm a security guard at a gigantic shopping mall with some other guards. I went off to my area while the others went to theirs. I started to do my rounds, going into shop. It was getting kind of close to Halloween and the mall was packed. That's when I noticed him. This cloaked figure coming towards me smoothly. It bumped into me as it passed me and I felt this feeling of fear. I called out to it to see if I'd get a response. I yelled something, I don't know, like stop, right there. It didn't acknowledge that I was there, so I followed it to see where it was going. It stopped and turned slightly to see if it was being followed, then continued down. But the pursuit was cut short by an elderly man falling down in a shop. I went to go help him up. I turned back to where the cloaked figure was walking around, but it wasn't there. It vanished into thin air. I went to have my break, and when I was about to walk through the door, I happened to run into my friend. I asked him, almost as a joke, hey, you didn't happen to see a cloaked figure walking around? He went white and said yeah, and this time it was looking at me. We both sat down and didn't bring it up again for the rest of the shift. When the night shift began, I hopped on the cart, fired up the belt driver, and started doing my round. Then I heard a sound that sounded like laughing. I yelled, who's there? And I shone my light on what looked like the rear end of a grizzly, a gigantic grizzly bear, but its front half looked like a bobcat with red eyes and fangs. Who's there? It said in a distorted version of my own voice. I was done. I jumped into the cart and I sped all the way to the entrance of that mall and I ran outside. I've never seen it since that incident. And did you happen to look for a new job or something? Maybe change states, or are you still working at the mall where you know there's probably a skinwalker at? And number 1, I tried to save the best for last with this story posted by user Go Cougar about a skinwalker and their family. You take a listen. I had to snip just a little bit out of this one for timing, but we kept the big beats of it and it's a good story and I'm glad we have it. After graduating high school, Aunt Ani got a job at the grocery store. She started dating a regular and would sneak out at night. It was nothing out of the ordinary until my mom would return home seeing strange items such as tomahawks and animal skulls carved with strange writing and scripture in the backyard. Growing up listening to many stories about witchcraft, skinwalkers, and wendigos like most kids in the res, she immediately became curious about these items. It had become obvious that the relationship wasn't all that it seemed. My mom took one of these skulls to the tribal elder. After examining it, the elder told my mom that the skull was crafted to perform black magic, and the elder was very suspicious. A few days later, Sean and Annie snuck out to the Backwoods, but my mom decided to stalk them to see what they were doing. Sean and Annie arrived at an open space in the woods while my mom was hiding in the bushes. They fell into a trance and fell onto the ground screaming and laughing uncontrollably, followed by a sound of bone cracking. They transformed into tall, half deer, half human creatures standing on their back legs. My mom bolted out of the bushes, running back to the trailer to tell the elders everything she saw. A few days later, my mom went to Annie's trailer to pack up and found a note written that said, "I love you. I'm off to a better world. And that was the last Annie was heard from. But 2 months after Annie's disappearance, my mom got woken up by a voice calling her name during an afternoon nap. She immediately recognized the voice. It was Aunt Annie. But when she went outside, she didn't see anyone around except for a deer with a lip and bright green eyes. This deer walked up to my mom and bowed as if it wanted my mom to pet it. My mom believed it was Aunt Annie, her final goodbye. Whew.